The bus rattled to a stop on a dirt road that looked like it led to nowhere. Mara Quinn pulled her duffel bag from the overhead rack and stepped down onto gravel that crunched like broken glass under her boots. The driver didn't say goodbye. Didn't even wait for her to clear the door before the hydraulics hissed and the bus lurched away, trailing dust and diesel exhaust. She stood alone at the edge of a landscape so vast it made her feel microscopic. Wyoming stretched in every direction. Flat brown fields, distant mountains like broken teeth against a bleached sky, and nothing else. No town, no gas station, no sign of human life except for a crooked wooden gate about 50 yards ahead and a dirt path disappearing beyond it. The wind hit her full force, sharp and cold even though it was May. She zipped her jacket higher and started walking. The job posting had been bare bones, cook needed, remote ranch, room and board, no references required. That last part had sold her. No references meant no questions meant no past. And Mara had plenty of past she didn't feel like explaining. She'd been on the move for 3 years. Phoenix, Denver, Salt Lake City, Boise, cities that blurred together, jobs that paid just enough, apartments that never felt like home because home wasn't something she believed in anymore. When the landlord in Boise started asking too many questions about why her mail came from different names, she'd packed her bag and found the next bus heading east. The ranch job had popped up on a bulletin board at a truck stop outside Casper. The handwriting was shaky, desperate maybe. She'd called from a payphone and a man's voice, flat and exhausted, had told her the address and asked when she could start. "Tomorrow," she'd said. Good. That was the whole interview. Now, walking up the dirt path with her bag cutting into her shoulder, she wondered what kind of place needed a cook so badly they'd hire a stranger sight unseen. The gate swung open with a shriek of rusted hinges. Beyond it, the path widened into a proper driveway, rutted and uneven. In the distance, she could finally see buildings, a sprawling 2-story ranch house, faded white with peeling paint and a sagging porch, a barn leaning slightly to one side, corrals, a few scattered outbuildings, and more emptiness beyond. As she got closer, she noticed the silence, not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind, the kind that sat on your chest and made it hard to breathe. A battered red truck sat in the driveway, mud caked on the wheel wells. Chickens scratched in the dirt near the barn, pecking at nothing. Somewhere a gate banged in the wind, metal on metal, over and over. Mara climbed the porch steps. The wood groaned under her weight. She knocked 3 times. Nothing. She waited, then knocked again, harder. The door opened. A man stood there, tall and lean, with dark hair going gray at the temples and eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in months. He wore a faded flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, jeans stained with dirt and something darker. His face was all hard angles and stubble, and when he looked at her, it was like he was seeing through her instead of at her. "Cole Hart?" she asked. "You Mara?" "Yeah." He nodded once and stepped back. "Come in." The house smelled like dust and old coffee and something burnt. The entryway opened into a living room cluttered with boots, coats, and toys that looked like they hadn't been touched in weeks. The furniture was mismatched, a sagging couch, a coffee table scarred with water rings, shelves full of books, and picture frames turned face down. Cole walked ahead without saying anything, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. Mara followed, taking it all in. The kitchen was worse. Dishes piled in the sink, a pot on the stove with something crusted and black inside. The table was covered with papers, unopened mail, a half-empty bottle of whiskey. "Kids are at school," Cole said, his back to her. "They'll be home around 4. There's 6 of them, ages 5 to 17. You'll meet them tonight." 6, Mara repeated. The job posting hadn't mentioned that. That a problem? No. He turned to look at her, and for a second she saw something flicker in his face. Doubt, maybe, or just exhaustion so deep it had carved itself into his bones. "You ever cook for a family this size?" "I've cooked for worse," Mara said. It wasn't a lie. She'd worked in enough greasy diners and crowded kitchens to know her way around a stove. "Your room's upstairs, second door on the right, bathrooms across the hall. Meals are at 7, noon, and 6. You're responsible for all of them. Grocery run is Thursdays. I'll give you cash. What about—" "They'll eat what you make," he cut her off. "Don't ask me what they like. I don't know anymore." There was something brutal in the way he said it. Not angry, just empty. Anything else I should know? Mara asked. Cole looked at her for a long moment. Don't expect them to talk much. Don't take it personal. And then he walked out, the screen door banging shut behind him. Mara stood in the kitchen, alone in the mess and the silence. She dropped her bag on the floor and looked around. The sink was a disaster. The fridge was probably worse. The whole place felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. By the time the kids came home, she'd scrubbed the kitchen within an inch of its life. The dishes were clean, the counters were clear. The burnt pot was soaking in the sink, and she'd found enough ingredients to throw together something that resembled dinner: spaghetti with jarred sauce, a bagged salad, and garlic bread from a tube of dough she'd found shoved in the back of the fridge. It wasn't fancy, but it was food. She heard them before she saw them, voices outside, a truck door slamming, footsteps on the porch. Then the door swung open and they came in like a storm. 6 kids. Cole hadn't been lying. The oldest was a boy, 17 maybe, tall and broad-shouldered with dark hair like his father's and a look on his face that could have curdled milk. Behind him came a girl, 15 or so, skinny and pale with her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Then 2 more boys, close in age, maybe 12 and 10, both of them sandy-haired and wary. A younger girl, maybe 8, with tangled braids and dirt on her knees. And finally the smallest, a little girl, no more than 5, clutching a stuffed rabbit that looked like it had been through a war. They all stopped when they saw Mara standing in the kitchen. "Who are you?" the oldest boy asked. His voice was flat, hostile. "Mara," she said. "I'm the new cook." "We don't need a cook," he said. "Your dad seems to think you do." The boy's jaw tightened. "Dad doesn't know what he needs." "Ethan," the older girl said quietly. "Don't." Ethan ignored her. He stared at Mara like he was trying to decide whether she was worth the effort of hating. Then he turned and walked toward the stairs. "Dinner's in 20 minutes, Mara called after him. He didn't answer. The rest of the kids shuffled past her without a word. The 2 boys disappeared upstairs. The girl with the braids grabbed a juice box from the fridge and left. Only the oldest girl and the youngest lingered. "I'm Sophie," the older girl said. Her voice was soft, cautious. "That's Lily." She nodded toward the little one with the rabbit. "Hi, Lily," Mara said. Lily didn't say anything. She just stared wide-eyed, clutching the rabbit tighter. "She doesn't talk much," Sophie said. "Not since—" She stopped herself. "Anyway, thanks for making dinner. We've been eating cereal for a while." "How long's a while?" Sophie shrugged. "Couple months, maybe." Mara felt something twist in her chest, but she didn't let it show. "Well, tonight you're eating spaghetti." Sophie almost smiled. Almost. Then she took Lily's hand and led her out of the kitchen. Dinner was a disaster. Cole didn't show. Ethan didn't show. The 2 middle boys, Jake and Sam, Sophie told her, ate in silence, shoveling food into their mouths without looking up. The younger girl, Emma, picked at her plate and left half of it untouched. Lily sat with her rabbit in her lap and didn't eat at all. Only Sophie made an effort. She asked Mara where she was from, how long she'd been cooking, whether she'd ever been to Wyoming before. Mara answered with half-truths and deflections. She'd learned a long time ago how to talk without saying anything. After dinner, the kids scattered. Mara cleaned up alone, scraping uneaten spaghetti into the trash and wondering what the hell she'd gotten herself into. She found Cole in the barn an hour later. He was fixing a fence post, hammering nails with mechanical precision, his face unreadable in the dim light. "Your son didn't come to dinner," Mara said. "I noticed. The little one didn't eat." "She never does." Mara crossed her arms. "You want to tell me what's going on here, or should I just keep guessing?" Cole stopped hammering. He looked at her, and for the first time she saw something crack in his armor. Not much, just a hairline fracture. "My wife died 8 months ago," he said. "Cancer. By the time they found it, it was everywhere. She was gone in 6 weeks." Mara didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. "Ethan blames me," Cole continued. "Sophie thinks she has to hold everyone together. The boys are angry. Emma's scared, and Lily—" His voice broke just slightly. "Lily hasn't spoken since the funeral." "And you?" Mara asked quietly. Cole picked up the hammer again. I'm still here. That was all he gave her. Mara walked back to the house and climbed the stairs to her room. It was small and plain. A bed, a dresser, a window looking out over the dark fields. She sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. She'd planned to stay a month, maybe 2. Take the money, move on. That was the deal she'd made with herself. But downstairs she could hear the house settling, could hear the silence pressing in, could picture Lily clutching that rabbit like it was the only thing keeping her from drowning. Mara lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Don't get attached. It was the only rule she had left. The next morning she woke to the sound of someone crying. It was soft, muffled, coming from somewhere down the hall. Mara sat up, groggy and disoriented, and checked the clock, 5:30 a.m. Still dark outside. She pulled on her jeans and crept into the hallway. The sound was coming from the last room on the left. The door was cracked open. Inside, Lily sat on the floor in her pajamas, clutching the rabbit and sobbing quietly, her whole body shaking. Mara hesitated. She should walk away, should let someone else handle this, but no one else was coming. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. "Hey," she said softly. Lily looked up, her face streaked with tears. "You okay?" Lily shook her head. Mara knelt down beside her. "Bad dream?" A nod this time. "Yeah," Mara said. "Those suck." Lily stared at her, and for a second Mara saw herself in that kid's eyes. Saw the fear, the loss, the feeling of being untethered in a world that didn't make sense anymore. "You want to sit with me for a minute?" Mara asked. Lily didn't answer, but she didn't pull away when Mara sat down on the floor beside her. They sat there in the dark, 2 broken people who didn't know how to say it out loud. And Mara knew, right then, that she was already in too deep. After that night on Lily's floor, something shifted. Not in a good way, not in some warm, fuzzy breakthrough. It was messier than that. Lily started showing up in the kitchen while Mara cooked. She wouldn't say anything, still hadn't spoken a word, but she'd drag a chair over to the counter and sit there, rabbit in her lap, watching. Mara tried to ignore her at first, tried to keep that distance she'd promised herself. But it was hard to ignore a 5-year-old who looked at you like you were the only solid thing in a tilting world. "You just gonna sit there?" Mara asked one morning, cracking eggs into a bowl. Lily nodded. "All right then." That became their routine. Lily would appear before dawn, before anyone else was awake, and they'd exist in the same space without needing words. Mara would cook, Lily would watch. The rabbit would sit between them like a third party to some unspoken treaty. The problem was Ethan. He started making his presence known in small, deliberate ways. He'd walk into the kitchen while Mara was cooking and pour himself coffee without acknowledging her. He'd leave his dishes on the table instead of bringing them to the sink. He'd make comments under his breath, nothing she could call him out on directly, but pointed enough that she knew exactly what he thought of her. "Dad's really scraping the bottom of the barrel now," he said one morning, just loud enough for her to hear. Mara was chopping onions. She didn't look up. "You got something to say to me. Say it to my face." Ethan turned, leaning against the counter with his arms crossed. "You're not gonna last. You know that, right? They never do." "They?" "The others. There were 3 before you. One quit after 2 weeks, one lasted a month. The last one made it 6 weeks before she couldn't take it anymore." "Take what?" He gestured around the kitchen, at the house, at everything. "This, us, the whole screwed up situation. You think you're different, but you're not. You'll leave. They always leave." Mara set down the knife and looked at him, really looked at him. He was 17, but his eyes were older, tired, angry in a way that came from hurt, not meanness. "Maybe I will," she said. "But I'm here now, so unless you want to cook your own breakfast, I suggest you back off." Ethan's jaw tightened. For a second, she thought he might actually say something real. Instead, he grabbed his coffee and walked out. Sophie caught her in the hallway later that morning. "Don't take it personally," she said quietly. "Ethan's been like that since Mom died. He's angry all the time, at Dad, at us, at everyone." "You say why?" Sophie looked down at her hands. "He thinks Dad didn't do enough. Didn't get Mom to the doctor fast enough. Didn't push for better treatment. I don't know if that's true or not, but Ethan believes it. And now he's stuck here, taking care of all of us when he should be—" She stopped. "I don't know. Living his own life, I guess. What about you? Mara asked. What do you think? Sophie's smile was sad and small. I think it doesn't matter what I think. Mom's still gone. That night, Mara made pot roast. It took hours, searing the meat, chopping vegetables, letting everything simmer low and slow until the whole house smelled like something that used to be home. She set the table carefully, put out actual napkins, even found candles in a drawer and lit them. Cole came in first, stopping short when he saw the setup. What's all this? Dinner, Mara said. Looks like more than dinner. It's food on a table, don't overthink it. The kids filtered in one by one. Emma's eyes went wide when she saw the candles. Jake and Sam sat down without a word, but kept glancing at each other like they weren't sure what to make of it. Sophie helped Lily into her chair, settling the rabbit on the table beside her plate. Ethan was last. He stood in the doorway, taking it all in with that same hard expression. We doing something special? He asked. Some holiday I forgot about? Sit down, Ethan, Cole said. I'm just asking. Sit down. Ethan sat, but the tension came with him, thick enough to choke on. Mara served the food in silence. Pot roast, roasted carrots, and potatoes, rolls she'd made from scratch that afternoon. She put a plate in front of each person and then sat down at the end of the table, opposite Cole. For a minute, nobody moved. Then Jake picked up his fork and took a bite. His eyes widened slightly. This is good, he said. Sam tried it next, then Emma, then Sophie. It's really good, Sophie said, and she sounded surprised. Even Lily picked up her fork, though she just pushed food around her plate without eating. Cole ate slowly, methodically, but Mara noticed he finished everything. Ethan didn't touch his food. Not hungry? Mara asked. Not really. It's pot roast. Your sister said it was your mom's favorite. The table went silent. Sophie's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Cole's head snapped up, his eyes sharp. Sophie didn't tell you that, Ethan said quietly. Yeah, Sophie said. I did. This morning. I told her mom used to make pot roast on Sundays. Ethan stared at Mara like she'd just committed some unforgivable crime. So what? You thought you'd recreate it? Thought you'd play house, and we'd all just forget? I thought I'd make dinner, Mara said evenly. That's it. Bullshit. You're trying to replace her. Ethan, Cole said, his voice low and dangerous. It's true. That's what this is. That's what all of this is. He shoved his chair back, the legs screeching against the floor. I'm not playing along with this. I'm not pretending she's... Sit down, Cole said. No. Ethan, sit down. Make me. The words hung in the air. Cole stood slowly, and for a second Mara thought he might actually grab the kid. Instead, he just stared at him, and whatever Ethan saw in his father's face made him take a step back. Get out, Cole said quietly. Go to your room. Gladly. Ethan stormed out. A door slammed upstairs hard enough to rattle the windows. Nobody spoke. Emma was crying silently, tears running down her face. Jake and Sam stared at their plates. Lily clutched her rabbit, her whole body rigid. Sophie broke first. I'm sorry, she whispered. I shouldn't have told you. I didn't think... It's not your fault, Mara said. He's right, though. Mom used to make this. And now you're here making it, and it's like... Her voice cracked. It's like we're trying to replace her, and we can't. We can't. She stood and ran from the table, leaving her plate half full. One by one, the other kids left. Jake, Sam, Emma. Until it was just Mara, Cole, and Lily. Lily looked at Mara, then at her father, then back to her plate. She picked up a small piece of carrot, put it in her mouth, and chewed slowly. Then she slid off her chair and walked out, rabbit dragging behind her. Cole and Mara sat in the wreckage of what was supposed to be a nice meal. I screwed up, Mara said finally. No, Cole said. You didn't. I did. How do you figure? I hired you to fix something I should have fixed myself. Put you in the middle of this mess and expected... He stopped, rubbing his face with both hands. I don't even know what I expected. You expected someone to feed your kids. I expected someone who wouldn't care enough to make it complicated. Mara looked at him across the table, at this man who was holding on by his fingernails and losing his grip a little more every day. Then you hired the wrong person, she said. The town made its opinion known the following Thursday. Grocery Day meant driving into Faro, population 1,200, a place so small it barely warranted a dot on the map. Mara took Cole's truck. He'd tossed her the keys without a word and drove the 30 miles into town with a list and cash in her pocket. The grocery store was the size of a convenience store anywhere else, cramped aisles and flickering lights, and a cashier who looked like she'd been there since the place opened in 1950. Mara was loading canned tomatoes into her basket when she heard them. Two women in the next aisle, their voices carrying. I heard Hart hired another one. Another cook? Lord have mercy. What's that, number 4? She must be desperate. Nobody in their right mind would take that job. Well, she's not from here, that's for sure. Saw her at the feed store last week. Looked rough, if you ask me. Probably running from something, they always are. Mara stood very still, her hand frozen on a can of beans. Those poor kids, the first woman continued. Bad enough they lost their mother. Now they've got some stranger cooking their meals, sleeping in their house. It's not right. Cole should know better. Should have let family step in. Family tried. His sister offered to take the younger ones, but he wouldn't hear of it. Too proud. That's always been his problem. Mara set the can down carefully and walked around the corner. The two women were older, maybe in their 60s, dressed in identical fleece vests and judgment. They looked up when they saw her, their conversation dying mid-sentence. Can I help you with something? Mara asked. Excuse me? The first woman said. You were talking about me. Figured I'd save you the trouble and introduce myself. I'm Mara Quinn, the desperate stranger. The women's faces flushed pink. We weren't. Yeah, you were. And for the record, not bet. Word, I'm not running from anything. I took the job because it pays and I needed work. That's it. What the Hart family does is none of your business. We're concerned. No, you're gossiping. There's a difference. The second woman drew herself up, indignant. Now you listen here, young lady. We've known the Hart family for 30 years. We have every right to be concerned about those children. Then maybe you should have been concerned enough to help when they needed it, Mara shot back. Instead of standing around a grocery store talking about how wrong it is that someone actually showed up, she turned and walked away before they could respond, her heart pounding in her chest. By the time she got to the register, the whole store was watching. Small towns were like that. Gossip moved faster than wildfire. The cashier rang up her groceries and pointed silence, and Mara paid with cash, took her bags, and left. She was loading the truck when she heard footsteps behind her. That was quite a show. Mara turned. A man stood there, maybe mid-40s, wearing a sheriff's badge and a knowing smile. Didn't realize I was performing, Mara said. In Faro? Everything's a performance. He stuck out his hand. Tom Grady. I'm the sheriff, such as it is. Mara shook his hand warily. Mara Quinn. I know. Word travels. He leaned against the truck bed, casual. You working out at the Hart place? Yeah. How's that going? Why, someone file a complaint? Not yet. But Deb Marshall, that's one of the ladies you just lit into. She's on the school board. Wouldn't be surprised if she starts asking questions. Questions about what? About who you are. Where you came from. Whether you're fit to be around those kids. Mara's stomach tightened. I'm the cook, that's all. Maybe, but this town's got a long memory and a short fuse when it comes to outsiders. He straightened up, his smile fading. Look, I'm not here to cause trouble. Just giving you a heads up. Folks around here loved Diane Hart. They're protective of her kids. You're going to have to prove yourself whether you want to or not. And if I don't care about proving myself, then you're going to have a harder time than you already do. He tipped his hat and walked away. Mara stood there as the parking lot, bags in the truck bed, and felt the weight of this place settling on her shoulders. She'd been here less than 2 weeks, and already she could feel the walls closing in. When she got back to the ranch, Sophie was waiting on the porch. How'd it go? She asked. Fine. You're lying. Mara hauled a bag out of the truck. Why aren't you in school? Half day. Teacher conference. Sophie followed her inside, grabbing another bag. What happened in town? Nothing. Mara. Mara set the bag on the counter and turned to face her. Some women at the store were talking. I told them to mind their business, that's all. Sophie's expression shifted. somewhere between worried and impressed. Who? Deb Marshall and some other woman. Oh no. What? Deb Marshall runs everything in this town, the school board, the church committee, the town council. She's got her fingers in all of it. If you made her mad, I don't care if I made her mad. You should. She can make things really hard for us. Harder than they already are? Sophie didn't have an answer for that. They put the groceries away in silence, and Mara tried not to think about small-town politics, or sheriffs with warnings, or the way this place seemed determined to chew her up and spit her out. That night, Emma had a nightmare. Mara woke to screaming, high-pitched, terrified, the kind that made your blood run cold. She bolted out of bed and into the hallway just as Cole came running up the stairs. Emma's door was open. Inside, the 8-year-old was thrashing in her bed, tangled in sheets, sobbing and screaming words that didn't make sense. "Emma, wake up," Cole said, grabbing her shoulders gently. "You're okay. Wake up." Emma's eyes flew open, wild and unseeing. "Where's Mom? Where is she? I can't find her." "She's not here, baby. I'm sorry. She's not here." "No, she was right here." Emma's sobs turned into wails, and she fought against her father's grip like she was drowning. Mara stood in the doorway, useless. Sophie appeared beside her, then Ethan, both of them looking gutted. "This happens every few nights," Sophie whispered. "She dreams Mom's still alive and then wakes up and has to lose her all over again." Cole held Emma while she cried, rocking her like she was small, and Mara felt something crack wide open inside her chest. She'd been wrong. So wrong. She'd thought she could come here, keep her head down, do the job, and leave. But these weren't just kids who needed feeding. They were kids who were drowning, and every adult in their life was too broken to throw them a rope. When Emma finally calmed down, Cole carried her back to bed. Ethan disappeared without a word. Sophie lingered in the hallway with Mara. "You okay?" Mara asked. Sophie laughed, but it came out bitter. "No. Are you?" "No." "Good. At least you're honest." She started toward her room, then stopped. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you're here. Even if Ethan isn't, even if the town hates you, I think we need someone who's not afraid to fight back." She closed her door before Mara could respond. The next morning, Mara found Ethan in the barn before sunrise. He was mucking stalls, working with the kind of angry energy that came from not sleeping. He didn't look up when she walked in. "What do you want?" he asked. "To talk." "Not interested." "Too bad." He stopped, leaning on the pitchfork, and glared at her. "You got something to say? Say it." "I'm not trying to replace your mom." "Could have fooled me. I'm here to cook, that's it. I'm not trying to be your friend, I'm not trying to fix you. I'm just trying to get through the day without screwing everything up worse than it already is." Ethan studied her, suspicious. "Then why are you still here?" "What?" "The others left. The first one quit because Dad yelled at her. The second one left because I made her life hell. The third one couldn't handle Emma's nightmares. So why are you still here?" Mara hesitated. She didn't have a good answer, didn't have one that made sense even to herself. "I don't know," she said finally. "Maybe I'm stubborn. Maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I just don't have anywhere better to be." For the first time, something in Ethan's face softened, just barely. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I get that." He went back to mucking the stall, and Mara turned to leave. "Hey," Ethan called after her. She stopped. "The pot roast was good. I tried it later, when nobody was looking." Mara almost smiled. Almost. Things didn't get easier after that, but they got different. Ethan still didn't talk much, but he stopped leaving his dishes on the table. Emma started eating a little more at dinner. Jake and Sam asked Mara to teach them how to make pancakes, and they burned 3 batches before they got it right. Lily still didn't speak, but she started helping in the kitchen, handing Mara ingredients, stirring when told, setting the table with careful precision. And Cole started showing up for meals. It wasn't much, but it was something. Then Deb Marshall made her move. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Cole answered it in his office, and Mara only knew something was wrong when she heard him raise his voice. "That's none of your concern. No, I don't care what the board thinks. She's doing her job just fine." Mara stood in the hallway, listening. "You want to come out here and inspect? Fine, do it. But I'm telling you right now, if you come at my family with some trumped-up concern, You're going to regret it." He slammed the phone down. Mara knocked on the doorframe. "What was that about?" Cole looked up, his face hard. "Deb Marshall says she's received complaints that you're unsuitable to be working with children, wants to send someone from social services to check on the kids." "Can she do that?" "She can try." "And if they find something wrong?" Cole's jaw tightened. "Then we fight." But Mara could see it in his eyes, the fear that they might not win. The social worker showed up 3 days later in a gray sedan that looked like it had never seen a dirt road in its life. Mara watched from the kitchen window as a woman in her 50s climbed out, clutching a clipboard like a shield and picking her way across the gravel in shoes that were completely wrong for a ranch. Cole met her on the porch before she could knock. "Mr. Hart, I'm Linda Pacheco from Child Protective Services. I believe you're expecting me." "Not exactly expecting," Cole said. "But come in." Mara wiped her hands on a towel and stepped back from the stove. She'd been cooking since dawn, homemade cinnamon rolls, bacon, eggs, fresh coffee. The house smelled like a home that had its act together, even if that was a lie. Linda Pacheco walked in with the kind of careful eyes that missed nothing. She scanned the living room, the clean floors, the organized coats on their hooks. Mara could see her mentally checking boxes. "This is Mara Quinn," Cole said. "She's the cook I mentioned on the phone." Linda extended her hand. Her grip was firm, professional. "Miss Quinn, I understand you've been here about 3 weeks?" "About that." "And you live on the premises?" "I have a room upstairs." "I see." Linda made a note on her clipboard. "I'll need to see that room as part of the inspection." "Inspection?" Cole repeated, his voice flat. "That's what we're calling this?" "Mr. Hart, I'm just doing my job. We received a complaint from Deb Marshall. I'm not at liberty to say who filed the complaint, but the concerns raised were serious enough to warrant a visit." She looked around again. "Where are the children?" "School," Cole said, "where they're supposed to be." "Of course. I'll need to speak with them when they return. In the meantime, perhaps you could show me around." The next 2 hours were excruciating. Linda Pacheco went through the house like she was cataloging evidence. She checked the refrigerator, opened cabinets, inspected bedrooms. She asked Cole questions about routines, schedules, who did what, and when. She took notes constantly. When she got to Mara's room, she stood in the doorway for a long moment, taking in the sparse furniture, the single bag still half unpacked. "You travel light," Linda observed. "I don't need much." "How long do you plan to stay?" The question felt like a trap. "As long as I'm needed." "And you have experience working with children?" "I have experience cooking. That's what I was hired to do." "But you're living in close proximity to 6 minors. You understand that requires a certain level of—" "I understand." Mara cut her off. "I'm here to help, that's all." Linda made another note. Mara wanted to grab that clipboard and throw it out the window. When the kids came home from school, Linda was waiting in the living room like a spider in a web. They filed in one by one, stopping short when they saw the stranger sitting on their couch. "Kids, this is Ms. Pacheco," Cole said. "She's here to ask you some questions. You don't have to be scared. Just answer honestly." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "What kind of questions?" "About how things are going here at home. Your routines, your care, that sort of thing." "Because someone complained," Sophie said quietly. She wasn't asking. "We're just making sure everyone's doing okay," Linda said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She spoke to each of them separately. Ethan went first, coming out 10 minutes later with his jaw clenched and his hands in fists. Sophie went next, then Jake, then Sam. Emma came out crying, and Mara had to physically stop herself from going to the kid. When it was Lily's turn, Mara couldn't take it anymore. "She doesn't talk," Mara said. "Hasn't spoken since her mother died. You're going to traumatize her for nothing." Linda looked up from her clipboard. "I appreciate your concern, Ms. Quinn, but I need to see all the children." "Then see her. But don't expect her to answer questions she can't answer." Lily walked into the living room, clutching her rabbit, her eyes huge. Cole started to follow, but Linda held up a hand. "I need to speak with her alone. She's 5 years old. I'm aware, it's protocol." Cole looked like he wanted to argue, but he stepped back. The door closed. Mara stood in the kitchen with her hands gripping the counter, listening to the silence from the other room. No voices, no sound at all. She counted the seconds, 60, 90, 120. When the door finally opened, Lily came out with tears streaming down her face. She ran straight to Mara, wrapping her arms around Mara's legs and holding on like she was drowning. Mara looked at Cole. He looked at Linda Pacheco. "Are we done?" he asked, his voice dangerous. "Almost. I just need to—" "We're done," Cole said. "You've seen the house. You've talked to the kids. If you need anything else, call my lawyer." Linda's smile went brittle. "Mr. Hart, I understand this is stressful, but I'm trying to help." "You're trying to find something wrong because Deb Marshall told you to. Well, you didn't find it. So unless you've got a legal reason to be here, I'm asking you to leave." Linda stood slowly, smoothing her skirt. "I'll file my report within the week. You'll receive a copy." "Can't wait." She walked out, her heels clicking on the porch, and got into her gray sedan. The engine started. Gravel crunched, and then she was gone. The silence she left behind was worse than her presence had been. Lily was still clinging to Mara's legs. Cole stood in the middle of the living room looking like he'd been hit by a truck. The other kids hovered in doorways, uncertain. "What did you tell her?" Cole asked finally. "Nothing," Ethan said. "I told her we were fine, that Mara cooks and you work, and we go to school, and everything's normal." "Same," Sophie said. "I told her we're okay." "I said Mara makes good pancakes," Jake offered. Despite everything, Mara almost laughed. Emma sniffled. "I told her I miss Mom. She asked if I was sad, and I said yes. Is that bad?" "No, baby," Cole said. "That's not bad." He looked at Mara, still standing there with Lily wrapped around her, and something passed between them. Not words, just an understanding that they'd crossed some line they couldn't uncross. "What happens now?" Mara asked. "Now we wait," Cole said, "and hope that woman has half a conscience." The report came back 5 days later. Cole read it at the kitchen table while the kids were at school, his face getting harder with every page. When he finished, he set it down carefully. "Well?" Mara asked. She found no evidence of abuse or neglect. House is clean, kids are fed and attending school, no immediate concerns. He paused. But she's recommending follow-up visits. Says the family is fragile and could benefit from additional oversight. Which means Deb Marshall gets to keep sending people to poke around. "Yeah." Mara sat down across from him. "I could leave, take myself out of the equation." Cole looked up sharply. "Is that what you want?" "It's not about what I want. It's about what makes this easier for you and the kids." "Easier," Cole repeated, like the word tasted wrong. "You think it'd be easier if you left? If we went back to cereal for dinner and Emma crying herself to sleep and Lily—" He stopped. "You saw her yesterday. She held on to you like you were the only thing keeping her from falling apart. That's the problem. I'm not supposed to be that for her, for any of them." "Why not?" The question hit harder than it should have. Mara didn't have a good answer. Just the same instinct that had kept her moving for 3 years, the same fear that if she stayed anywhere too long, she'd lose something she couldn't afford to lose. "Because I don't stay," she said finally. "That's not who I am." Cole leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You ever think maybe that's exactly who you are, and you're just scared to admit it?" Before she could answer, the phone rang. Cole grabbed it. "Hart." His expression changed. "When? Where?" He was already standing, grabbing his keys. "I'll be right there." He hung up and looked at Mara. "That was the school. There's been an incident. I need to go." "What kind of incident?" "They wouldn't say. Just that I need to come get Ethan and Emma." "I'm coming with you." Cole didn't argue. They found Ethan in the principal's office with a split lip and blood on his shirt. Emma was in the nurse's office with ice on her wrist. The principal, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a permanent frown, stood when they walked in. "Mr. Hart, thank you for coming so quickly." "What happened?" "There was a physical altercation during lunch. Ethan was involved in a fight with another student." "And Emma?" "She was injured trying to break it up." Cole's jaw tightened. He looked at Ethan. "You want to tell me your side?" Ethan stared at the floor, his hands clenched. "They were talking about Mom, about you, about Mara, saying things." What things? Does it matter? I told them to shut up. They didn't. So I made them. The principal cleared his throat. The other student required medical attention. His parents are considering pressing charges. Charges, Cole repeated, for a schoolyard fight. It was more than a schoolyard fight, Mr. Hart. Ethan broke the boy's nose. Mara looked at Ethan, 17 years old with his mother's eyes and his father's stubborn pride, sitting there with blood on his knuckles and shame written all over his face. What did they say? She asked quietly. Ethan looked up at her. They said you were probably sleeping with Dad, that you were just some whore who came here to take advantage. And when Emma told them to stop, his voice cracked. They said Mom would be ashamed of her. The silence in that office was suffocating. I want their names, Cole said. Mr. Hart, I want the names of the kids who said that about my daughter, about my family. That's not going to help. Their names. The principal hesitated, then wrote something on a piece of paper and handed it over. Cole looked at it, his face going white. Danny Marshall, he read. Of course, Deb Marshall's grandson. Mr. Hart, I understand you're upset, but upset? My son defended his sister from bullies, and you're talking about charges? Where the hell were the teachers? Where was the supervision? The fight happened quickly. The bullying didn't. This has been going on for months, since my wife died, and nobody did a damn thing about it. Cole grabbed Ethan's arm and pulled him up. We're leaving. You want to suspend him? Fine. But I'm not sitting here and pretending this is his fault. They collected Emma from the nurse's office. Her wrist was sprained, wrapped in an ace bandage, and walked out into the parking lot. Ethan was shaking, whether from anger or adrenaline or something else, Mara couldn't tell. In the truck, nobody spoke for the first 10 miles. Then Emma said, small and broken, I'm sorry. For what? Cole asked. For trying to stop them. If I hadn't said anything, maybe Ethan wouldn't have... Don't, Ethan cut her off. Don't apologize. You didn't do anything wrong. But your lip... I'd do it again 100 times. Nobody talks about Mom like that. Nobody talks about you like that. Emma started crying. Ethan pulled her close, and Mara saw the kid he'd been before grief and anger had carved him into something harder. When they got home, Cole sent Emma upstairs to rest. He made Ethan sit at the kitchen table while Mara got the first aid kit. This is going to sting, she said, dabbing antiseptic on his split lip. Ethan winced but didn't pull away. You think they'll press charges? Probably not, Cole said. Danny's parents are idiots, but they're not that stupid. They know what he said. They press charges. It becomes public. Deb Marshall won't want that. And if they do, then we deal with it. Mara finished with the antiseptic and stepped back. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since she'd arrived. I'm sorry, he said, for what they said about you. Don't be. I've been called worse. That doesn't make it okay. No, she agreed. It doesn't, but breaking someone's nose doesn't fix it either. It made me feel better. Despite everything, Mara smiled. Yeah, I bet it did. That night, after the kids were in bed, Mara found Cole on the porch. He was sitting on the steps, smoking a cigarette, something she'd never seen him do before. Didn't know you smoked, she said. I don't, haven't in 10 years. Found this in the back of a drawer. He took a drag, coughed, and shook his head. Tastes like shit. Mara sat down beside him. The night was cold, clear, the kind of dark you only got this far from cities. Stars everywhere, thick as paint. You okay? She asked. No. Fair enough. They sat in silence for a while. Then Cole said, Diane would have handled this better. She always knew what to say. How to make things right. I'm stumbling around in the dark, and every time I think I've got my footing, something else breaks. You're doing the best you can. That's not good enough. It's all any of us can do. Cole took another drag and stubbed the cigarette out on the step. That social worker's report is going to make everything worse. You know that, right? Deb Marshall's going to use it. She'll say the kids are unstable, that the environment here is toxic. She'll push to have them removed. She can't do that. They're your kids. She can try. And in a town like this, where everyone knows everyone and she's got her fingers in everything, he stopped. I can't lose them, Mara. I've already lost too much. Mara didn't know what to say to that. didn't know how to fix something this broken. So she just sat there beside him, two people trying to hold together things that kept falling apart. The next morning, Lily did something she hadn't done in 8 months. Mara was making breakfast when she felt a small hand tug on her sleeve. She looked down. Lily was standing there, still in her pajamas, rabbit tucked under one arm. "Hey kiddo, you hungry?" Lily nodded. Then, so quietly Mara almost missed it, she said, "Yes." Mara froze. The spatula slipped from her hand and clattered on the stove. "What did you say?" Lily looked up at her with those huge eyes. "Yes, I'm hungry." Mara dropped to her knees, her heart hammering. "Lily, you talked." "I know." "Does your dad know? Does Sophie?" Lily shook her head. "Just you." "Why just me?" Lily thought about it for a moment, hugging her rabbit tighter. "Because you're safe." 3 words, that's all it was. But they hit Mara like a freight train. She pulled Lily into a hug, this tiny kid who'd been silent for so long, and felt something inside her chest crack wide open. All the walls she'd built, all the distance she'd tried to maintain, it shattered in that moment. "You want to tell your dad?" Mara asked when she could speak again. Lily nodded. They found Cole in the barn, mucking stalls. He looked up when they came in, immediately alert. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Mara said. "Lily has something to tell you." Cole set down the pitchfork and knelt in front of his youngest daughter. "What is it, baby?" Lily looked at him, then at Mara, then back to her father. "I'm hungry," she said. Cole's face went through about 6 emotions at once: shock, disbelief, joy, relief, before settling on something that looked like he might break down completely. He grabbed Lily and held her so tight she squeaked. "Say it again," he whispered. "I'm hungry, Daddy." Cole pressed his face into her hair and his shoulders shook. Mara turned to leave, give them privacy, but Cole reached out and grabbed her hand. "Don't," he said. "Don't go." So she stayed. The news spread through the house like wildfire. By noon, all the kids knew. Sophie cried. Emma wouldn't let go of Lily's hand. Even Ethan smiled, a real smile, not the bitter half thing he'd been wearing for months. But the celebration was short-lived. That afternoon, smoke appeared on the horizon. Mara saw it first, a dark smudge against the blue sky, growing thicker by the minute. She was hanging laundry on the line when the wind shifted and brought the smell with it. Sharp, chemical. Wrong. She dropped the sheet she was holding and ran to find Cole. He was already outside, staring at the smoke. His face was grim. "Wildfire," he said. "Started about 10 miles west. Wind's pushing it this way?" "How fast?" "Fast enough. We need to start packing, now." They spent the next 3 hours in controlled chaos. Cole loaded the truck with important papers, photos, anything irreplaceable. Mara packed food, clothes, grabbed medications from the bathroom. The kids moved like they'd done this before, efficient, scared, helping each other without being asked. By 4 o'clock, the smoke was visible from the house. By 5, ash was falling like gray snow. The evacuation order came at 6. Sheriff Grady pulled up in his cruiser, lights flashing. "Cole, you need to get these kids out of here. Fire's jumped the highway. It's coming fast." "We're almost ready. Be ready now. You've got maybe an hour before it hits." They loaded into the truck, Cole driving, Sophie in the passenger seat, the rest of the kids crammed in the back. Mara climbed in last, pulling the door shut. That's when Lily screamed. "Mr. Flops! I forgot Mr. Flops!" Mr. Flops. The rabbit. The last thing her mother had given her before she died. "Lily, we can't," Sophie started. "No, we can't leave him. We can't." Lily was sobbing, reaching for the door, and Cole grabbed her. "Baby, it's just a toy." "It's not. It's Mom. It's all I have left of Mom." The words hung in the smoke-filled air. Cole looked at Mara. Mara looked at the house. She could see flames now, cresting the hill to the west. Orange and red against the darkening sky. The wind was howling, ash falling thicker. "Where is it?" Mara asked. "Mara, no!" Cole started. "Where is it?" "My bed," Lily sobbed. "Under my pillow." Mara opened the door and jumped out. "Mara!" Cole shouted. But she was already running toward the house. toward the smoke and heat and the stupidest decision she'd ever made. She hit the porch at a sprint and slammed through the door. Inside, the air was already thick. She pulled her shirt over her mouth and took the stairs 2 at a time. Lily's room was at the end of the hall. Mara burst in, grabbed the pillow, and found the rabbit underneath, worn, missing an eye, stitched together with love. She turned to leave. That's when she heard the window shatter downstairs. The fire had arrived. Smoke poured up the stairs like water flowing backward. Mara could hear the fire eating the first floor, a sound like something breathing, something alive and hungry. The heat hit her in waves, even from the second story. She ran for the stairs, rabbit clutched against her chest, and made it 3 steps down before she saw flames blocking the bottom. The living room was already gone, consumed in orange and red. The front door was invisible behind the wall of fire. "Shit!" she gasped, backing up. Her eyes burned. Her lungs screamed for clean air. She spun around, looking for another way out. The bathroom window. It faced the side of the house, away from the worst of the blaze. She ran back down the hall, stumbled into the bathroom, and slammed the door behind her. Smoke was curling under the gap at the bottom. She grabbed a towel, soaked it in the sink, and stuffed it against the crack. Bought herself maybe 30 seconds. The window was small, the kind that hadn't been opened in years. She yanked on the frame. It didn't budge. Painted shut. "Come on, come on!" She grabbed the toilet lid, heavy porcelain, and swung it at the glass. The window exploded outward in a shower of shards. Fresh air rushed in, and with it, more smoke from outside. The fire had surrounded the house. Mara looked down. It was a 12-foot drop to hard ground, and flames were licking up the side of the house about 10 feet to her left. If she jumped wrong, if she landed badly... The bathroom door started to blacken. She could hear wood cracking, the sound of nails popping from heat. The whole structure was coming apart. She climbed onto the toilet, then the sink, and squeezed through the window. Glass tore at her arms, cutting through her shirt, leaving red lines on her skin. She didn't care. She got her legs through, turned, hung from the sill by her hands, and let go. The landing knocked the air out of her lungs. She hit dirt and rolled, pain shooting through her shoulder like someone had driven a spike through it, and came up gasping. The rabbit was still in her hand somehow. A miracle or just dumb luck. Heat hammered down from above. The roof was catching now, flames eating through shingles like they were paper. She ran, half blind from smoke, heading for the driveway where she'd left the truck. It was gone. Of course it was gone. Cole had driven them to safety. That was the whole point. That was what she'd told him to do. Mara stood there alone, surrounded by fire on 3 sides and nothing but open field on the 4th. The barn was already burning, the whole structure engulfed. The outbuildings were going up like matchsticks. Even the chicken coop was a tower of flame. She could hear the chickens screaming before they went silent. She ran toward the field, away from the heat, her boots pounding dirt that was already warm through the soles. Behind her, something exploded. The propane tank maybe, or something in the barn. The shockwave hit her back and she stumbled but kept going, arms pumping, legs burning. The smoke was so thick she couldn't see 10 feet ahead. Her chest felt like it was full of broken glass. Every breath was agony, her throat raw, her eyes streaming tears that cut clean tracks through the ash on her face. She kept running anyway, clutching that stupid rabbit, because if she stopped, she was dead. The heat was intense even out here, radiating from the fire like it was trying to pull her back in. She could feel it on her neck, on her back, could smell her own hair singeing. The wind shifted and smoke rolled over her like a wave. She went down to her knees, coughing so hard she thought she might break a rib. "Get up," she told herself. "Get up or die here." She got up. She didn't hear the truck until it was almost on top of her. Headlights cut through the smoke, wild and jerking. The truck skidded to a stop and Cole jumped out before it had even fully stopped moving, his face a mask of terror and rage and something else she couldn't name. "What the hell were you thinking?" he shouted, running toward her. Mara couldn't answer, couldn't breathe. She held out the rabbit like an offering, like proof that this insanity had been worth it, like this one small thing could justify nearly dying. Cole grabbed her and half dragged, half carried her to the truck. His hands were shaking. She could feel it even through her own tremors. He shoved her into the passenger seat and gunned the engine before her door was even closed. They tore down the driveway, fire chasing them, ash falling like snow. In the rearview mirror, Mara could see the house, her house, their house, even though she'd only been there a few weeks, collapsing in on itself. The second story caved into the first with a sound like the world ending. The porch gave way, the support beams cracking like gunshots. Everything they'd had was being erased, turned to ash in memory. Cole's hands were white-knuckled on the wheel. His jaw was so tight Mara thought his teeth might crack. She could see a vein throbbing in his temple, could see his chest heaving with breaths that came too fast. "You could have died," he said, his voice shaking. "You could have died for a toy." "It's not a toy," Mara rasped, her voice barely there. "Not to her. I don't care, you don't get to—" He stopped, swallowing hard. His eyes were red, whether from smoke or tears she couldn't tell. "You don't get to do that. You don't get to make me watch someone else. He couldn't finish. The words hung there, unspoken but loud. They hit the main road doing 70. Other vehicles were fleeing too, a whole line of headlights in the smoke. Cars, trucks, a tractor pulling a horse trailer. The whole county was evacuating. Cole merged into the flow, his breathing ragged, one hand on the wheel and the other gripping the seat so hard his knuckles had gone white. Mara looked down at the rabbit in her lap, one eye missing, stitches coming loose. The fabric worn thin from years of being loved. There was ash on it now, gray smudges on the faded pink fur. She brushed at it uselessly. "Where are the kids?" she asked, her voice like gravel. "Sheriff's station. Sophie's with them. I told them to wait there." He glanced at her, his eyes wild. "I told them you were right behind us, that you'd be fine. And then I got to the station and you weren't there, and Sophie said you'd run back inside, and I—" His voice cracked. "I came back for you." "You shouldn't have." "I know, but I did. The house is gone. I don't care. You're not." They drove in silence after that, following the evacuation route to Faro. The sky was black with smoke, turning afternoon into twilight. The sun was just a red disk somewhere behind the haze. Other cars passed them going the opposite direction. Fire trucks, emergency vehicles, volunteers with water tanks. Everyone converging on a disaster they couldn't stop, only contain. The town was chaos. People everywhere, displaced families, volunteers setting up emergency shelters. The high school gymnasium had been converted into a makeshift refuge center, cots and blankets and scared faces. The parking lot was full of vehicles, people hauling belongings, kids crying, adults trying to look calm and failing. Cole found a spot and killed the engine. He sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel, staring at nothing. "I thought I lost you," he said quietly. "You didn't. I could have, and the kids would have—" He stopped. "Lily would have blamed herself. She would have spent the rest of her life knowing you died trying to get her rabbit." Mara hadn't thought about that, hadn't thought past the moment, past Lily's tears, past the need to fix one small thing in all this unfixable mess. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be sorry, just don't do it again." "I'll try." Cole laughed, but it came out broken. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met, or the most reckless. I can't figure out which." "Both, probably." He reached over and touched her face, his hand gentle despite the shake in it. His thumb traced the cut on her cheek from the glass. "You're bleeding." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're covered in ash and blood, and you can barely breathe." "Still better than being dead." Cole pulled her close, awkward across the center console, and held her. Mara could feel his heart hammering against her chest, could feel him shaking, and realized he'd been more scared than he'd let on. "We should go find the kids," she said into his shoulder. "Yeah, in a minute." They stayed like that for longer than a minute, two people trying to convince themselves they were both still alive. When they finally went inside, Cole leading the way through the crowd, Mara braced herself. The gymnasium was packed, easily 200 people, maybe more. Families huddled on cots, Red Cross volunteers distributing water and blankets. A table set up with donated food. Kids running around despite the circumstances because kids didn't know how to sit still even during disasters. Cole found his kids in a corner, huddled together. Lily saw Mara first and screamed her name, actually screamed it, loud and clear enough that half the gymnasium turned to look, and ran across the floor. She hit Mara at full speed, nearly knocking her over, little arms wrapping around her waist so tight it hurt. "You got him," Lily sobbed, grabbing the rabbit from Mara's hands. You got Mr. Flops. You got him. You got him. Yeah, kiddo. I got him. Sophie was next, then Emma, both of them crying and holding on to Mara like she might disappear if they let go. Even the boys came over, Jake and Sam with their eyes suspiciously wet, trying to look tough and failing. Ethan stood back, his arms crossed, but his face told the whole story. You're an idiot, he said. I know. You could have died. I know that too. Don't do it again. I'll try not to. He almost smiled. Almost. Then he looked at his dad and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or just relief that they were all still here, still whole, still a family. They found space on some cots in the corner. It wasn't much. Thin mattresses that had seen better days, scratchy blankets, barely enough room for all of them. But it was better than the parking lot. Around them, other displaced families did the same. Mara recognized a few faces from town. The woman who ran the hardware store, the family that owned the diner. Even some of the people who'd been at the grocery store that day, the ones who'd been talking about her. They weren't talking now, just sitting there in shock, same as everyone else. Someone had set up a TV in the corner showing news coverage. Mara watched for a minute. Aerial footage of the fire, orange and red spreading across brown landscape, smoke plumes visible from space. The ticker at the bottom said 15,000 acres and climbing, 30% contained, multiple structures lost, no confirmed fatalities yet. Yet. Cole Hart? They turned. A Red Cross volunteer stood there with a clipboard, middle-aged woman with kind eyes and tired smile. Yeah, Cole said, I'm checking in on displaced families, making sure everyone has what they need. You have 6 children, is that right? 6, yeah. And this is... She looked at Mara. Mara Quinn, Mara said. I work for the family, live on the property. The woman made a note. You all made it out safely? Yes, ma'am. Good. Good. We have food being brought in shortly. There's a first aid station set up in the corner if anyone needs medical attention. And we're working on more permanent housing solutions, but that'll take a few days. For now, you're welcome to stay here. She moved on to the next family. Lily crawled into Mara's lap, still clutching Mr. Flops. She was shaking, little tremors running through her whole body. Mara wrapped her arms around her and held on. You came back, Lily whispered. Of course I did. The other cooks didn't come back. They left, and they didn't come back. I'm not the other cooks. Promise? Mara looked at Cole, then at the other kids, then back to this little girl who'd already lost so much. I promise. They spent the night in the gymnasium on cots that were too short and under blankets that smelled like mothballs and decades of storage. Around them, other people's grief played out in whispers and quiet crying. Mara lay on her cot and stared at the ceiling, listening. A woman 3 cots over sobbing about her house. A man talking on his phone about insurance and salvage and rebuild costs. Kids crying for toys and pets and things left behind. The whole place felt like a wake for lives that weren't quite dead yet, but would never be the same. Cole was on a cot next to hers, Lily curled against him, finally asleep with Mr. Flops clutched tight. He caught Mara looking and held her gaze. Thank you, he mouthed. Mara nodded and closed her eyes. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time she started to drift, she saw flames, heard glass breaking, felt the drop from the window, that moment of free fall where she wasn't sure she'd survive the landing. Around 2 a.m, she gave up and went outside. The air was still thick with smoke, but it was better than the gymnasium. She sat on the curb in the parking lot and let herself shake, let herself feel all the fear she'd been pushing down. She'd almost died, not in some abstract way, not in some close call story she'd tell later. She'd actually, genuinely almost died. And for what? A stuffed rabbit. Except it wasn't just a rabbit. It was the last piece of a dead woman, the last tangible proof that Lily's mother had existed and loved her. And Mara had looked at that little girl's face and known she couldn't leave it behind. Couldn't sleep either? Mara turned. Sophie stood there in sweatpants and an oversized sweatshirt someone had donated. Her hair pulled back, her face pale. Too much going on up here, Mara said, tapping her temple. Sophie sat down beside her. Yeah, me too. They sat in silence for a while. Then Sophie said, I watched the house burn. From the truck. Dad was driving and I was in the passenger seat and I just watched. Watched everything we had turned into smoke. I'm sorry. The weird thing is, I'm not sad about the house. I'm sad about Mom's things, her clothes, her books, the stupid coffee mug she used every morning, all the little pieces of her we had left, gone. Memories aren't gone, Mara offered. No, but it's harder to remember without the things, you know? Like, I can remember her drinking coffee, but I can't picture the mug anymore. Not clearly. And in a few years, what else will I forget? Mara didn't have an answer for that. Can I ask you something? Sophie said. Sure. Why'd you really run back in? I know you said it was for the rabbit, but there was like 2 minutes between us leaving and the house being completely on fire. You had to know you might not make it out. Mara thought about how to answer that, about all the reasons and excuses and justifications. I spent 3 years running away from things, she said finally, from my past, from attachments, from anything that could hurt me. And then I came here and you guys made me care again, made me want to stay. And when Lily started crying about that rabbit, I realized I'd rather die trying to save something that mattered to her than live knowing I could have tried and didn't. Sophie was quiet for a long moment. That's either really beautiful or really messed up. Probably both. Yeah. Sophie leaned her head on Mara's shoulder. For what it's worth, I'm glad you made it out. Me too, kid. They sat there until the sky started to lighten, until the smoke thinned enough to see stars, until the world felt a little less like it was ending. When they went back inside, Cole was awake, talking quietly with one of the Red Cross volunteers. He looked up when they came in. They're setting up temporary housing, he said. Motel rooms in town. 2 rooms for families our size. We can move in today. How long can we stay? Sophie asked. Week, maybe 2. After that, he shrugged. We'll figure it out. They spent 3 more days in Faro while the fire burned itself out against the mountains and the highway in sheer exhaustion. Cole drove out to see what was left on the 4th day. He took Ethan with him. They came back 3 hours later, both of them covered in soot, looking gutted. It's gone, Cole said simply, sitting down heavily on one of the motel beds. All of it. The barn? Sophie asked. Gone. The outbuildings? Gone. Everything, Sophie. Everything's gone. The house, the barn, the shop, the old bunkhouse. He stopped. Wait. No, the bunkhouse is still standing. Everyone looked up. What? Mara said. The old bunkhouse. The one we haven't used in 15 years. It's still there. Burned on one side, windows blown out, but the structure's intact. Roof's still on. How is that possible? Sophie asked. Wind? Luck? I don't know. But it's standing. Ethan spoke up. It's rough, though. Real rough. No power. No water except the well. And it's small. Maybe 30 by 20. How small is small? Emma asked. 1 room, Ethan said. Just 1 big room. They all looked at each other. 7 people in 1 room. It's better than nothing, Cole said. Better than imposing on the motel system or splitting up to stay with relatives. We could make it work. Temporarily. While we figure out the rebuild. How long is temporarily? Jake asked. I don't know. Months, maybe? However long it takes to get insurance money and permits and contractors lined up. Mara thought about 1 room with 7 people. No privacy. No space. Living on top of each other 24/7. I think we should do it, she said. Everyone turned to look at her. You barely survived in a house with walls and separate rooms, Ethan said. You want to try it with all of us in one space? I want to try keeping this family together, Mara said. That motel isn't home. Splitting up to stay with relatives isn't home. But that land, that's where you belong. Where we all belong. So yeah, I think we should do it. Cole was staring at her. You sure? No, but I'm saying it anyway. Sophie started laughing. This is insane. Completely, Jake agreed. I like it, Lily said, swinging her legs from the bed. It'll be like camping. Camping without toilets, Sam pointed out. Or running water, Emma added. Or walls, Ethan said. But they were all smiling now, even Cole. All right, he said. Let's go see what we can salvage. They moved into the bunkhouse on a Saturday, a week after the fire. It was exactly as bad as Mara had imagined. The building was maybe 30 by 20, with a wood stove in one corner that looked like it hadn't been used since the Nixon administration. A sink that barely worked, connected to the well by pipes that groaned when you turned the handle. No bathroom. Just an outhouse about 50 yards away that looked like it might collapse if you sneezed near it. The floor was warped. 3 windows were broken. Mice had made homes in the walls, and when they started cleaning, they found evidence of raccoons and possibly a family of possums. But it was theirs. They spent the first 3 days just making it livable. Ethan and Cole boarded up broken windows with plywood they'd bought in town, sealing out the wind and most of the light. Sophie and Mara scrubbed every surface with bleach and determination, attacking years of accumulated filth. The younger kids hauled water from the well in buckets, cleared out mouse nests, swept up enough dirt to fill a dump truck. When they were done, it still wasn't pretty. But it was clean and dry, and theirs. They set up sleeping areas. Girls on one side, boys on the other, Cole near the stove, Mara on a cot by the door. Privacy was a joke. Personal space didn't exist. You couldn't move without bumping into someone. Couldn't have a conversation without everyone hearing. Couldn't have a moment alone unless you walked 50 yards to the outhouse. And even then, someone usually followed to make sure you didn't get lost. Mara rigged up a cooking area outside under a tarp, using a propane stove she'd bought in town with what was left of her savings and whatever mismatched pots and pans she could find at the thrift store. It wasn't a kitchen, it wasn't even close. But she could make food, and that was what mattered. The first meal she cooked there was chili, cheap, filling, something that could stretch to feed 7 people and maybe have leftovers. She made it in a big pot someone had donated, stirring over the propane flame while the kids set up makeshift seating with stumps and overturned buckets. They ate sitting in a circle, and it should have been depressing. This family that had lost everything, eating chili out of mismatched bowls in the dirt. But somehow it wasn't. "This is insane," Sophie said, but she was smiling. "Completely," Jake agreed, sopping up chili with a piece of bread. "I like it," Lily said, swinging her legs from her bucket. "It's like camping." "Camping without toilets," Sam pointed out again, because apparently that was his new favorite observation. "Or running water," Emma added on cue. "Or walls," Ethan said, completing the familiar refrain. But they were all smiling. Even Cole, who sat on a stump that was too low for his height, his knees practically up to his chin, eating chili and looking at his kids like he couldn't quite believe they were all still here, still whole, still fighting. That night, after the kids were asleep, or at least pretending to be, Mara stood outside the bunkhouse and looked at the ruins of the main house in the distance. Just a black scar on the land now, barely visible in the dark. Foundation and ash and memories burned away. Cole came up beside her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "Cold?" he asked. "Little bit. Regret staying yet?" Mara thought about it. About the motel and the fire and the rabbit and everything that had led her to this moment, standing outside a one-room bunkhouse with 7 people she somehow loved, looking at the ruins of what was and trying to imagine what could be. "No," she said. "Not even a little." "Good," Cole said, "because I don't think I could do this without you." "You could." "Maybe. But I don't want to." He kissed her then, soft and tentative, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed. Like maybe this disaster had changed the rules between them. Mara kissed him back, tasting smoke that would probably linger for months and grief that would probably linger forever, and something that might have been hope. When they broke apart, she was shaking. "This is a bad idea," she whispered. "I know. I'm still technically your employee. You still pay me. Haven't paid you in weeks. Can't pay you now. Fire took the checkbook. Doesn't change the power dynamic. Doesn't change how I feel about you either. And how do you feel about me?" Cole was quiet for a moment, his hands on her waist, his forehead pressed against hers. "Like you're the first thing that's made sense since Diane died. Like you're the reason I can breathe again. Like I want to build whatever comes next with you, not just for you." Mara felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't know how to do this, how to be part of something, how to stay." "Then we'll figure it out together. Just don't run. Please don't run." "I'm not running. I'm here. I'm staying." "Promise?" She thought about Lily asking the same thing in the gymnasium, thought about all the promises she'd made and broken over the years, thought about whether she could actually keep this one. "I promise," she said, and meant it. They stood there in the dark, holding each other, while inside the bunkhouse, their makeshift family slept. And for the first time in 3 years, Mara let herself imagine a future that didn't involve running. Living in the bunkhouse was harder than Mara expected and somehow easier too. The hard parts were obvious. No privacy meant everyone knew everyone's business. The boys snored. Emma talked in her sleep. Lily had nightmares 3 nights out of 5 and would wake up crying, which woke everyone else up. The outhouse was 100 yards of misery in the middle of the night, especially when it was cold or raining. The wood stove was temperamental, either roaring hot or stone cold, no in between. They ran out of water constantly because 7 people used a lot of water, and someone always forgot to refill the buckets. But the easy parts surprised her. There was something about being forced together that made them actually talk. No one could hide in their rooms. No one could avoid difficult conversations. They worked through arguments because they had to, because there was nowhere to storm off to except outside. And outside was cold and empty and made the point that being alone was worse than being together. They fell into routines without meaning to. Mara cooked. Sophie and Emma helped, learning to make bread from scratch, to stretch ingredients, to turn nothing into something. The boys hauled water and gathered firewood and learned to split logs with an axe that was probably too heavy for them. Ethan fixed things, the sink when it broke, the stove when it wouldn't light, the roof when it started leaking. Cole worked from dawn to dark on the insurance claim and rebuild plans and trying to figure out how to pay for everything. And Lily followed Mara everywhere, same as she'd done in the house. Shadow and rabbit and constant companion. 2 weeks in, Mara woke to find Lily pressed against her side, breathing softly, and realized the kid had abandoned her own cot and climbed into Mara's sometime in the night. "She does that," Sophie whispered from across the room. "Sleeps better next to you." "Should I?" "Let her. She needs it." So Mara did. And when Lily woke up and didn't immediately panic about being in the wrong bed, when she just smiled and said good morning and asked what was for breakfast, Mara felt something in her chest crack a little wider. The town's opinion shifted slowly at first, then all at once. It started with the fire itself. Mara running back into a burning building became the story everyone told, sometimes accurate, usually embellished. She'd saved the rabbit. She'd saved the kid's last memory of her mother. She'd nearly died doing it. People who'd called her an outsider and a stranger now called her brave. Crazy maybe, but brave. Then came the bunkhouse. People drove by and saw 7 people making it work in impossible conditions. Saw the kids helping, saw Cole and Mara building something from nothing, saw a family refusing to break. Word spread the way it does in small towns. Over coffee at the diner, in line at the grocery store, at church on Sunday. The Harts were rebuilding. The Harts needed help. The Harts had that woman who'd run into the fire, and maybe she wasn't so bad after all. The first donation showed up on a Tuesday morning. Someone left lumber by the road with a note tied to it. For the rebuild, a friend. No name. Cole stared at it for a long time. "Who the hell—" "Does it matter?" Ethan asked, already unloading boards. "I guess not." Then more came. Bags of nails left by the gate. A used kitchen sink wrapped in a tarp. Windows salvaged from a demolition project. Still in decent shape. Small things, practical things, left anonymously like offerings. Sheriff Grady stopped by one afternoon with his truck bed full of supplies. "Community wanted to help," he said, unloading bags of concrete mix with Cole's help. "Figured you could use it." "Whose community?" Cole asked, suspicious. "Does it matter?" "Tom, look, Hart, you lost everything. Your kids are living in a bunkhouse with no plumbing. And you're too damn proud to ask for help. So people are giving it anyway. Take it or don't, but stop making this harder than it needs to be." Cole looked at the supplies, then at the sheriff, then back at the supplies. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Thank your neighbors. Most of them, anyway." It came out later that Grady had organized it himself, going door to door, shaming people into contributing. Even some of Deb Marshall's allies had kicked in money or materials or labor, though they'd never admit it publicly. The biggest surprise came from an unexpected source. Ethan's fight with Danny Marshall had consequences, but not the ones anyone expected. The school had suspended both boys for a week. The Marshalls had threatened legal action. But then something shifted. It might have been the fire. Might have been public opinion turning. Might have been someone finally telling Deb Marshall that her grandson was a bully and she needed to deal with it. Whatever the reason, the Marshalls backed down. Not just backed down, apologized. It came in the form of a letter first, delivered by hand to the bunkhouse. Cole read it out loud while the kids gathered around. Dear Mr. Hart and family, we want to apologize for Danny's behavior and the hurt it caused. What he said about your mother and about Miss Quinn was unacceptable. We've had serious conversations with him about respect and kindness, and he understands he was wrong. We're also making a donation to your rebuild fund in the hope that it helps your family recover. Sincerely, Robert and Karen Marshall. Silence. Deb Marshall's son wrote that? Sophie asked. Apparently. And they're donating money? Says so right here. Ethan laughed, short and bitter. Hell must have frozen over. But the real shock came 2 days later when Danny Marshall showed up at the bunkhouse himself. Mara saw him first, a teenage boy getting out of a car, his nose still bandaged from where Ethan had broken it. She called for Cole, who came out ready for a fight, but Danny didn't look like he was there to fight. He looked scared. Mr. Hart, I'm Danny Marshall. I wanted to apologize. In person. Cole crossed his arms. Go on then. I'm sorry for what I said about your wife, about your family, about Ms. Quinn. It was cruel and it was wrong, and He swallowed hard. I don't have an excuse. I was trying to be tough in front of my friends and I said horrible things, and I'm sorry. Emma appeared in the doorway of the bunkhouse. Danny saw her and flinched. I'm especially sorry to you, Emma. What I said about your mom, that she'd be ashamed of you, that was the worst thing I've ever said to anyone. And it's not true. Your mom would be proud of you, for standing up for your family, for being brave. Emma looked at Ethan, who'd come up behind Cole, then back at Danny. Okay, she said finally, but if you do it again, my brother will break more than your nose. Danny nodded quickly. I know, I won't. I promise. He got back in his car and left. Ethan watched him go, then looked at Emma. You didn't have to accept his apology. I know, but Mom always said holding grudges just makes you tired. Emma shrugged. I'm already tired enough. Even Deb Marshall made a move that shocked everyone, though she did it in the most Deb Marshall way possible. She didn't apologize. That would have required more humility than she possessed. She didn't show up at the bunkhouse or offer direct help, but she stopped pushing the CPS investigation, stopped making comments at town council meetings, just went quiet. Sophie had a theory about it. She realized she lost, Sophie said one night while they were doing dishes in a bucket of soapy water. The whole town saw what happened, saw us making it work, saw you run into a burning building and Dad come back for you. She can't spin that into us being victims who need saving from you. So she's just giving up? She's cutting her losses. It's different. She's not admitting she was wrong. She's just moving on to the next thing she can control. Think she'll leave us alone? As long as we don't give her ammunition. Yeah, probably. Mara hoped she was right. By late October, they'd settled into a rhythm. The bunkhouse was still cramped and cold and constantly falling apart in small ways, but it was theirs. They'd made it work. Cole got the insurance check in early November. He sat at the makeshift table they'd built from scrap lumber and stared at the number. It's not enough, he said finally. Mara was cooking dinner, some kind of stew made from donated vegetables, and a chicken someone had brought by. How much short? About 40,000, maybe more depending on materials and labor costs. Can you get a loan? Maybe. Bank's not thrilled about lending on fire-damaged land, but I've got history with them. 3 generations of Harts have banked there. That should count for something. So what's the plan? Cole rubbed his face with both hands. Rebuild the house, smaller than before, simpler, something we can actually afford. Ray says he can start in the spring if we get the foundation ready this winter. That's 6 months away. I know. We'll be living here through winter, through Christmas. I know that too. Mara stirred the stew and thought about spending winter in a one-room building with 7 people and a wood stove that barely worked. Thought about cold nights and frozen mornings and 6 months of no privacy. We'll make it work, she said. Cole stood up and came over to her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Is it? Or are we just... He stopped. What if I can't give them what they need? A real house, stability, normal life. Mara turned in his arms to face him. Cole, your kids are sleeping in a bunkhouse and cooking over a propane stove and using an outhouse that's probably older than your grandparents. And you know what? They're doing okay, better than okay. They're laughing again, fighting with each other in normal sibling ways instead of that careful avoidance from before. Even Ethan is coming around. Because of you. Because they're resilient. Because they're together. Maybe normal isn't what they need right now. Cole leaned his forehead against hers. What did I do to deserve you? Hired me off a bulletin board in a truck stop. Best decision I ever made. Second best, Mara corrected. First was coming back into that fire for me. That wasn't a decision. That was instinct. The decision was asking you to stay after. I'm glad you did. Yeah? Yeah. He kissed her, gentle and soft, and Mara kissed him back. Behind them, someone cleared their throat loudly. They broke apart to find all 6 kids watching from various corners of the bunkhouse, trying not to smile and failing. Dinner ready yet? Jake asked innocently. Or are you guys too busy to notice it's boiling over? Sam added. Mara spun around. The stew was indeed boiling over, spilling onto the propane stove. She grabbed a towel and pulled it off the heat, cursing. The kids burst out laughing. Smooth, Ethan said to his dad. Real romantic, Sophie added. Even Lily was giggling, Mr. Flops tucked under her arm. Cole and Mara looked at each other and started laughing too. Because this was their life now. No privacy, no space, just 7 people crammed together and somehow making it work. They ate dinner sitting on their usual spots. Stumps and buckets, and one actual chair they'd found at the dump and cleaned up. The stew was good despite the boil-over. Someone had donated fresh bread that afternoon. There was even butter, a luxury they couldn't usually afford. This is nice, Emma said. It's stew and bread, Jake pointed out. Yeah, but we're all together and nobody's crying and the house isn't on fire. Low bar, Ethan muttered. Still counts, Emma insisted. After dinner, after cleanup, after the kids had settled into their various corners to do homework or read or just exist, Cole pulled Mara outside. The night was cold, clear, the kind of dark you only got this far from cities. Stars everywhere, thick as paint. Their breath made clouds in the air. I need to tell you something, Cole said. Mara braced herself. Here it comes, she thought. The moment he realizes this is too hard, that I'm too broken, that we should go back to being employer and employee. Diane and I built that house together, Cole said, looking toward where it used to stand. Picked out every fixture, painted every room, planted trees in the yard. Our whole life was in there. I know. And now it's gone. All of it. The pictures, the memories. The memories aren't gone, Mara interrupted gently. They're in you, in the kids, in this land. A house is just wood and nails. I know, you said that before. But what I'm trying to say is, he turned to face her. What we build next, I want to build it with you, not for you, with you. As partners, as... He stopped, searching for words. As what? As whatever we are. Whatever this is between us. I know it's complicated. I know you're technically still my employee, even though I haven't paid you in months and probably won't be able to for a while. I know my kids come first, and that's a lot to ask someone to take on. I know you've got a past you don't talk about, and reasons for running that are probably bigger than anything I can offer you here. But I'm asking anyway. Asking what? Asking you to stay, really stay, not just until the house is done or until something better comes along. Stay and build this next thing with me, with us. Be part of this family, officially. Mara felt her chest tighten. Cole, you don't have to answer now. Just think about it. I don't need to think about it. Cole's face fell. I already decided, Mara continued. Weeks ago, actually. Maybe longer. I'm staying. You are? Yeah, I'm staying. I'm building whatever comes next with you, with all of you. Cole pulled her close and kissed her, deeper this time, like he was trying to memorize the feel of it. When they broke apart, they were both shaking. "The kids will be happy," he said. "The kids already know. They're not stupid." "No, they're not," he laughed. "Sophie cornered me last week and told me if I didn't ask you officially to stay, she was going to do it herself. She's a smart kid. Takes after her mother." They stood there in the cold, holding each other, and Mara felt something settle in her chest, something that felt like home. Winter hit hard that year. November brought freezing rain that turned the dirt around the bunkhouse into mud that sucked at your boots. December brought snow that piled up against the walls and made the roof creak. The wood stove worked overtime, eating through their supply of firewood faster than Ethan and the boys could replenish it. They celebrated Thanksgiving in the bunkhouse with a turkey someone had donated and sides made from whatever Mara could scrounge. The turkey didn't quite fit in the small oven someone had brought them, so they cooked it outside on a rack over the propane burner, rotating it every 20 minutes like the world's most complicated rotisserie. It was slightly burned on one side and raw in one spot they had to put back on to finish cooking. The mashed potatoes were lumpy. The gravy was too thick. The green beans were from a can. It was perfect. They ate crammed around the table, elbows bumping, passing dishes hand to hand because there wasn't room to set them down. Someone said grace, Ethan, surprisingly, and they all held hands while he thanked whoever was listening for their health and their family and the fact that they were all still here. "And for Mara," Lily added when Ethan was done. "Thank you for Mara." "For Mara," Sophie echoed. "For Mara," the others joined in. Mara felt tears prick her eyes and blamed it on the cold. Christmas came with the frame of the new house half finished, open to the sky. Cole and Ray had been working on it every day that wasn't too cold or too wet, laying foundation and framing walls. It was slow going. They couldn't afford to hire a full crew, so it was just the two of them and whatever volunteer labor they could scrounge. Ethan helped after school. Some of the men from town showed up on weekends. Piece by piece, it was coming together. They couldn't afford decorations for the bunkhouse, couldn't afford gifts for the kids. But on Christmas morning, Mara woke up to find Lily pressed against her side, breathing softly, and realized she had everything that mattered. Cole gave her a gift anyway, a small wooden box he'd made from salvaged wood with her name carved on top. "What's this for?" she asked, turning it over in her hands. "Whatever you want, recipes, memories, or just to have something that's yours." Mara opened it. Inside was a key. "What's this?" "Key to the new house. When it's done. Figured you should have one." She looked at him, at this man who'd lost everything and was rebuilding anyway, who'd let her into his life even when it would have been easier not to. "Cole, I know we haven't really talked about it, about what happens when the house is done, but I'm talking about it now." He took her hands. "I want you to stay, not as the cook, not as help, as part of this, of us, permanently." Around them, the kids had gone quiet, listening. "All of us want you to stay," Sophie said softly. "Please," Emma added. "We need you," Jake said. Sam nodded. Even Ethan looked up from the book he'd been pretending to read. Lily climbed into Mara's lap and wrapped her arms around her neck. "Don't leave us. Please don't leave us like Mom did." Mara held that little girl and looked at these people who'd somehow become hers, this family she'd stumbled into by accident and stayed in on purpose. "Yeah," she said, her voice breaking. "Yeah, I'll stay." Lily squeezed tighter. Sophie started crying. Emma joined her. Even the boys looked suspiciously emotional. Cole kissed her forehead. "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," Mara whispered back. The house was finished in March, 11 months after the fire. It wasn't the house that had burned. It was smaller, simpler, built with mismatched materials and volunteer labor and stubbornness. The kitchen was barely big enough to turn around in. The bedrooms were tight. The whole thing had a slightly ramshackle quality that would probably never go away. But it was theirs. They moved in on a Saturday, carrying their few possessions from the bunkhouse. The kids ran through the rooms, claiming spaces, shouting about windows and closets, and the fact that they had actual walls again, and doors that closed. That night, they had their first dinner in the new kitchen. Mara made spaghetti because it felt right, starting where they'd started almost a year ago. Cole sat at the head of the table. The kids filled in around him, and Mara took the seat at the other end, the one that had been waiting for her all along. After dinner, after the kids had scattered to explore their new rooms, Cole found Mara on the porch. She was looking out at the land, at the place where the old house had been, now just grass growing back. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, just thinking." "About?" "About how I almost left. That first week, when Ethan was giving me hell and the town hated me and everything felt impossible. I had my bag packed, was going to leave while everyone was asleep. What stopped you?" "Lily had a nightmare. I heard her crying and I went to check on her, and she grabbed my hand like I was the only thing keeping her from drowning. And I thought, just one more day. Just stay one more day." And then it was one more day after that, and another, until I'd stayed long enough that leaving felt like abandoning something that mattered. Cole pulled her close. "I'm glad you stayed." "Me too." They stood there as the sun set, painting the Wyoming sky in colors that looked like fire, but weren't. Like the past, but weren't. Like everything they'd lost and everything they'd found. And Mara Quinn, who'd spent 3 years running from everything, finally stopped. She'd found her home. 3 weeks after they moved into the new house, Cole asked her to marry him. He didn't do it fancy. No ring, no grand gesture, no getting down on one knee, just the two of them in the kitchen after everyone else had gone to bed, washing dishes together like they'd done 100 times before. "Mara," he said, drying a plate with a towel that had seen better days. "Will you marry me?" She almost dropped the pan she was scrubbing. "What?" "I know it's fast. I know we've only been, whatever we are, for a few months. But I also know that I don't want to do any of this without you. The kids don't want to do it without you, and I'm tired of pretending you're just the cook when everyone knows you're so much more than that." Mara set down the pan, her hand shaking under the soapy water. "Cole, if it's too soon, if you're not ready, I understand. But I had to ask. Because every day I don't ask feels like I'm lying about what this is. What you are to me." "What am I to you?" "Everything," he said simply. "You're everything." Mara thought about the woman who'd stepped off that bus almost a year ago. The one who'd had one rule: don't get attached. She thought about how completely she'd broken that rule, how she'd run into fire and stayed through ash and built something new from ruins. She thought about Lily's nightmares and Emma's grief and Ethan's bloody knuckles and Sophie's tired smile. Thought about Jake and Sam learning to split firewood and Cole holding her in the dark and all the small moments that had added up to this. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Cole kissed her, pulled her close despite the dish soap on her hands, and for a moment everything was simple and clear and right. Then Lily appeared in the doorway in her pajamas, Mr. Flops tucked under her arm. "Are you guys getting married?" she asked, her eyes bright with hope. Mara laughed, still in Cole's arms. "Yeah, kiddo, we are." "Good. I already told Emma you would. She owes me $5. "You bet on us getting married?" Sophie said it would happen by Easter. Emma said summer. I said before April. Lily grinned. I won. Cole shook his head, but he was smiling. "Go back to bed, troublemaker." "Can I tell everyone in the morning?" "You're going to anyway." "Yeah, but I'm asking permission so I don't get in trouble." "Fine. You can tell everyone in the morning. Now bed." Lily ran off, and they could hear her whispering loudly to Emma through the wall. So much for waiting until morning. By breakfast, everyone knew. Sophie cried happy tears and hugged Mara so tight she couldn't breathe. Emma started planning the wedding immediately, pulling out a notebook and making lists. The boys high-fived each other like their team had won a championship. Even Ethan smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes and made him look 17 again instead of 40. "About time," he said to his dad. "We were starting to think you'd never ask." "You knew I was going to ask?" "Dad, we all knew. You look at her like she hung the moon, and she looks at you like you're not a total disaster. It was pretty obvious." Cole threw a dish towel at him. Ethan caught it and threw it back. Over the next few days, word spread through Faro the way everything did in small towns, fast and with embellishments. The Hart widower was marrying the woman who'd run into a burning building. The woman who'd been an outsider was becoming family. The cook who'd shown up on a bus was staying for good. Deb Marshall didn't comment publicly, which was probably the closest thing to a blessing they were going to get from her. Some people in town were genuinely happy for them. Others were quietly judgmental, It had only been a year since Diane died. Wasn't that too soon? But they kept it to whispers. Sheriff Grady stopped by one afternoon with a bottle of whiskey and a handshake. "Congratulations," he said, shaking Cole's hand. "You picked a good one." "I know." "You planning a big wedding?" "Not really, just family, maybe a few friends." "Nothing fancy." Grady nodded. "Makes sense. For what it's worth, I think Diane would have approved. She always said you needed someone who wouldn't put up with your stubborn streak. Mara fits the bill." Cole's throat tightened. "You think so?" "I know so. Diane was practical above all else. She'd want you happy, want her kids taken care of. And that woman in there," he nodded toward the house where Mara was cooking dinner with Sophie's help. "She's doing both." They got married 6 weeks later on a Saturday in April, when the weather had finally turned warm and the grass was starting to come back green where the old house had stood. They didn't have money for a church or a venue or any of the traditional trappings, so they did it in the kitchen of the new house, the one Mara had christened with that first batch of spaghetti, the one they'd built together from ash and determination. Sheriff Grady officiated because he was the only person they knew who was legally allowed to, and because he'd become something like a friend over the past year. Mara wore a simple dress bought from the thrift store in Faro, cream-colored, not white, because white felt wrong for a second marriage even though this was her first. Cole wore the only suit he owned, the one that was slightly too tight in the shoulders and had been to every funeral and formal occasion for the past decade. The kids stood around them in their Sunday best, which wasn't much, but it was enough. Sophie had braided Emma's hair. The boys had actually combed theirs without being asked. Ethan wore a tie he'd borrowed from somewhere, looking uncomfortable but trying. And Lily wore a yellow dress with flowers on it and held Mr. Flops in one hand and a small bouquet of wildflowers in the other. Ray the contractor was there with his wife, a few neighbors who'd helped with the rebuild, some people from town who'd donated materials or time. Maybe 20 people total, crammed into a kitchen that was barely big enough for the family, let alone guests. When Grady asked if anyone objected, Lily raised her hand again. "What is it now, sweetheart?" Cole asked, trying not to laugh. "I object to waiting any longer. Can we do the kissing part now? I'm hungry and I know there's cake." Everyone laughed, even Grady, who'd been trying to keep things dignified. "We haven't done the vows yet," he pointed out. "Can we skip those? We all know they love each other." "Lily," Sophie hissed. "What?" "It's true." Grady looked at Cole and Mara. "You two want to skip to the end?" "Let's do the vows," Mara said, "but keep them short." So they said their vows, short, honest, nothing fancy. Cole promised to love her even when she burned dinner, which had happened more times than either of them wanted to admit. Mara promised to stay even when things got hard, which they both knew would happen again and again. They promised to build something together that honored the past but didn't live in it, promised to be partners in the mess and the beauty and everything in between. Cole's voice cracked when he said, "I never thought I'd get a second chance at this. At love. At family. At building a life with someone. Thank you for giving me that." Mara's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for letting me stay. For seeing past the stranger on your porch to whatever this became. You were never just a stranger. Even that first day. You were already part of this. We just didn't know it yet." Grady cleared his throat, suspiciously emotional himself. "By the power vested in me by the state of Wyoming, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Cole, you can kiss your bride." And then they kissed, and the kids cheered, and Lily yelled, "Finally!" So loud it echoed off the walls and probably carried to the road. The reception was potluck in the backyard, neighbors and friends bringing whatever they could. Casseroles and salads and a ham someone had smoked. Ray's wife had made a cake, 2 layers with cream cheese frosting that leaned slightly to one side, but tasted like heaven. Someone brought a guitar. Someone else brought more whiskey. Emma's lists had included decorations, so there were wildflowers in mason jars on every surface and paper streamers hung from the porch railings. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs. As the sun set and people danced in the grass to someone playing Johnny Cash covers, Mara found herself standing at the edge of it all, watching. Cole came up beside her, slipping an arm around her waist. "Regrets?" he asked. "Not even one." "Good, because you're stuck with us now. Legally binding and everything. I think you're stuck with me. Best deal I ever made." Lily ran over, Yellow dress grass-stained, flowers wilted in her hand. Come dance. Sophie says you have to dance because it's your wedding, and that's the rule. I'm not much of a dancer, Mara protested. That's okay. Neither is Dad. You can be bad at it together. So they danced, Cole and Mara and all 6 kids, awkward and laughing and terrible. Someone stepped on someone's foot. Emma spilled punch on Jake's shirt. Sam tried to dip Sophie and nearly dropped her. The music was too loud and off-key. The grass was uneven. Nobody cared. It was chaos. It was messy. It was imperfect. It was everything. Later that night, after everyone had left and the kids were supposedly asleep, but probably listening through the walls, Mara sat on the porch steps with Cole. The stars were out, thick and bright, the kind of sky that made you feel small in the best way. You think they're really okay? Mara asked quietly. The kids, with all of this, with me. I think they're better than okay. I think they're happy. Maybe for the first time since Diane died. You think she'd be okay with this? With me? Cole was quiet for a long moment, his hand finding hers in the dark. I think Diane was practical above all else. She'd want me happy, want her kids taken care of, and you. He turned to look at her. You do both. You make me happy. You take care of them. Not because you have to, but because you want to. I love them, Mara said simply. I didn't mean to. Wasn't planning on it, but I do. They love you too. Even Ethan, though he'd probably die before admitting it out loud. Mara smiled. He's a good kid. They all are. They had a good mother, and now they have... He stopped. Is it okay to say that? That they have you now? Or does that feel like I'm trying to replace Diane? They have me, Mara said. Not as a replacement. Not as a second Diane. Just as me. As someone who showed up and stayed and loves them the best way I know how. Which is perfect. It's not perfect. I'm not perfect. I burn things and lose my temper and don't always know what to say when Emma has nightmares or when Ethan gets that look on his face like he's drowning in grief. None of us are perfect. We're all just doing the best we can. They sat in silence for a while, comfortable and warm despite the cool night air. Then Cole said, Can I ask you something? Always. What made you stay? Really? That first week when everything was terrible? What made you stay? Mara had been asked this before, had given different answers at different times. But sitting here on her wedding night with her husband beside her and her family, sleeping inside, she wanted to tell the truth. I think, she said slowly, I stayed because for the first time in years someone needed me for something real. Not to work, not to hide, but to be present, to care, to show up every day and do the hard work of loving people who were broken and grieving and barely holding on. That's a lot to take on. It is. And I'd spent so long running from anything that required that kind of commitment that when I found it here, when I found you guys, I couldn't leave. Even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. I'm glad you stayed. Me too. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm really, really glad I stayed. Inside, Lily had crept out of bed and was watching from the window again, Mr. Flops clutched tight. She saw her father and her new mother, her mom, she'd started calling her, testing out the word to see how it felt. Sitting together, saw them happy, saw them whole. She turned to the rabbit and whispered, We did it, Mr. Flops. We got her to stay. She's ours now. Then she climbed back into bed, in a house that was full of life and noise and love, and fell asleep smiling. But the story didn't end there because real life never wraps up that neatly. The first challenge came a month after the wedding, in the form of a phone call that made Mara's blood run cold. She was in town picking up groceries when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Mara. A man's voice. One she hadn't heard in 3 years but would recognize anywhere. I've been looking for you. Her ex-husband, David. Her hand started shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. She looked around the parking lot like he might be there watching her, even though she knew he was probably hundreds of miles away. How did you get this number? Does it matter? I found you. Took a while. You're good at hiding, but I always knew I would eventually. What do you want? What do you think I want? I want you to come home. We can work this out, Mara. Whatever problems we had. You hit me, she cut him off, her voice low and hard. You controlled every aspect of my life. You isolated me from everyone I knew. That's not problems we had. That's you being abusive. That's not how I remember it. I don't care how you remember it. I'm not coming back, ever. Lose this number and forget you found me. I don't think so. See, I did some digging, found out you're living on some ranch in Wyoming, found out you married some widower with a bunch of kids. What do you think he'd say if he knew the truth about you? About why you really left? Mara's chest tightened. There's nothing to know. Isn't there? What about the money you took from our joint account when you left? What about the restraining order you filed under false pretenses? What about everything I did was legal? The money was mine. The restraining order was valid. You have nothing on me. Maybe not legally, but reputation matters in small towns, doesn't it? Wonder what the good people of Pharaoh would think if they knew you were a liar who abandoned her marriage and stole from her husband. Don't, Mara said. Don't do this. Then come home. Come back and we'll forget all this happened. Your new family never has to know about your past. Go to hell. She hung up and stood there in the parking lot, shaking, her groceries forgotten in the cart. 3 years. 3 years of being careful, of keeping her head down, of never staying anywhere long enough to be found. And he'd found her anyway. She got in the truck and drove back to the ranch, her mind racing. Should she tell Cole? Should she pack up and leave before David could make good on his threats? Should she? No. No more running. She'd spent 3 years running and it had gotten her nowhere. She was tired of being afraid, tired of looking over her shoulder, tired of letting David control her life, even from hundreds of miles away. When she got home, Cole was working on the fence line with Ethan. She parked the truck and went straight to him. I need to talk to you, she said. Now. Alone. Cole took one look at her face and handed his tools to Ethan. We'll finish this later. They went to the bedroom, the only place in the house with any privacy, and Mara told him everything. About David, about the abuse, about running for 3 years, about the phone call. Cole listened without interrupting, his face getting harder with every sentence. When she finished, he said, How did he find you? I don't know. I've been so careful. The wedding announcement. Emma put it in the local paper without asking. She thought it would be nice. He swore under his breath. Those things get posted online sometimes. If he was looking, it's not her fault. I know. But if he comes here, he won't. He's a coward. He threatens and manipulates, but he doesn't actually do anything. That's not his style. You sure about that? Mara wanted to say yes, wanted to be certain, but 3 years of running had taught her that certainty was a luxury she couldn't afford. No, she admitted. I'm not sure. Cole pulled her close. Then we prepare. I'll call Tom Grady, let him know what's going on. We'll make sure David knows you're not alone anymore, that you've got people who'll fight for you. This isn't your fight. The hell it isn't. You're my wife. That makes it my fight, our fight. He pulled back to look at her. You don't have to run anymore, Mara. You've got a home now, a family, and we don't abandon our own. Mara felt tears prick her eyes. I should have told you before about David, about why I was really running. You told me when you were ready. That's enough. What if he makes trouble? What if he tells people things that make them question? Let him try. Anyone who knows you, who's seen what you've done for this family, they won't believe whatever lies he tries to sell. Cole called Sheriff Grady that afternoon. Grady came out to the ranch and took down all the information. David's name, his last known address, the history of abuse, the restraining order that had expired after Mara left the state. I can't do much unless he actually shows up or makes concrete threats, Grady said. But I'll make some calls. Let him know we're aware of the situation. Sometimes that's enough to make guys like this back off. And if it's not, Cole asked, then we deal with it, together. The kids noticed something was wrong, even though Mara tried to hide it. Sophie cornered her in the kitchen that evening while Mara was making dinner. What's going on? Sophie asked bluntly. You've been weird all day. Dad's been weird. Even Grady came by, which he never does unless something's wrong. Mara considered lying, considered brushing it off. But these kids had been through enough lies and half-truths to last a lifetime. Remember how I told you I was running from something when I came here? Mara said. Your ex-husband. Yeah, well, he found me, called me today, made some threats. Sophie's eyes went wide. Is he coming here? I don't think so. But I wanted you to know in case anything happens. In case he shows up or tries to contact you guys. What kind of threats? Doesn't matter. Dad and Sheriff Grady are handling it. But you're scared. It wasn't a question. Mara nodded. Sophie hugged her, fierce and tight. We won't let anything happen to you, none of us. You're family now. I know. I mean it. Ethan already broke one guy's nose for talking about you. He'd probably do worse to someone who actually tried to hurt you. Despite everything, Mara smiled. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But it did come to that 3 weeks later when David showed up. He arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in a rental car, pulled up to the house like he had every right to be there. Mara saw him from the kitchen window and felt her blood turn to ice. Cole was in the barn. The kids were at school except for Lily, who was homesick with a cold, napping in her room. David got out of the car and looked around, taking in the new house, the rebuilt barn, the land stretching in every direction. He looked the same. Same blonde hair, same expensive clothes, same smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mara's hands were shaking. She wanted to run, to hide, to grab Lily and disappear. But she'd spent 3 years running and it hadn't solved anything. She walked out onto the porch. David's smile widened when he saw her. There you are. I was starting to think I had the wrong place. What are you doing here? I came to see my wife. Is that a crime? I'm not your wife. We've been divorced for 3 years. Legally, maybe, but in the eyes of... Don't, Mara cut him off. Don't pretend this is about anything other than control. You don't love me. You probably never did. You just can't stand that I left. David's smile faded. You took something that belonged to me. I took myself. I never belonged to you. We can argue semantics all day, or you can just come home and we can forget this whole mess happened. I am home. This? David gestured around at the ranch, his lip curling in disgust. This isn't a home. This is a dump in the middle of nowhere with someone else's kids and someone else's life. It's my life now. For how long? Until he gets tired of you? Until those kids realize you're not their real mother? You think playing house makes you belong here? The words hit harder than Mara expected, hitting on fears she'd been carrying since the beginning. You need to leave, she said. Not until you hear me out. She told you to leave. Cole's voice, hard and cold. He'd come out of the barn, must have heard the car, seen David. He walked toward them with the kind of controlled calm that was more dangerous than anger. David sized him up. You must be the new husband. Interesting. I expected someone more. I don't care what you expected. Get off my property. I'm just here to talk to my wife. She's not your wife. She's mine. And you're trespassing. David's eyes narrowed. Did she tell you how we met? How she pursued me, married me, and then ran off with my money when things got tough? She told me you abused her, Cole said flatly, that you controlled every aspect of her life, that she had to run to be safe. And you believed her? A woman who lies about everything, who used a fake name when she came here? She used her maiden name. And I believe her because I've seen who she is. I've watched her build a life here, take care of my kids, run into a burning building to save a stuffed rabbit. You want to talk about who's lying? Look in a mirror. David's face flushed red. You don't know what you're talking about. I know enough, and I know you need to leave now, before I call the sheriff. I'd like to see you try. Cole pulled out his phone and dialed. Tom? Yeah, it's Cole Hart. Got a trespasser at my property. David. He looked at Mara. Collins, she supplied. David Collins. He's harassing my wife and refusing to leave. How fast can you get here? He hung up. 5 minutes. You can wait in your car, or you can wait in the dirt. Your choice. David looked at Mara, then at Cole, then back to Mara. She could see him calculating, trying to figure out if he could still win this. This isn't over, he said finally. Yeah, it is, Cole said. You show up here again, you call her again, you so much as think about her. I'll make sure you regret it. We clear? David got in his car without answering and peeled out, spraying gravel. Mara's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the porch steps, shaking so badly her teeth chattered. Cole sat beside her and pulled her close. You okay? No, but I will be. He can't hurt you anymore. I know, but for a minute there when he showed up, I was that scared woman again, the one who ran, the one who couldn't fight back. But you didn't run. You stood there and faced him, because you were here. I'll always be here. We all will. Grady showed up 10 minutes later. By then, Mara had stopped shaking enough to give a statement. Grady took notes and said he'd file a report, contact David's local police department, make it clear that any further contact would result in charges. He'll probably leave you alone now, Grady said. Guys like that are bullies. They fold when someone stands up to them. And if he doesn't, then we deal with it. But I don't think he will. He got the message. After Grady left, Mara went to check on Lily. The little girl was still napping, curled up with Mr. Flops, completely unaware of the drama that had played out downstairs. Mara sat on the edge of the bed and smoothed Lily's hair back from her forehead. This little girl who'd been through so much loss already. These kids who'd welcomed her in despite having every reason to keep their walls up. This man who'd defended her without hesitation. This was her family, her home. And she'd be damned if she let David or anyone else take it away. When the other kids got home from school, they knew something had happened. Sophie took one look at Mara's face and said, "He was here, wasn't he?" "Yeah." "What happened?" "Your dad sent him away. Sheriff Grady took a report. It's handled." Ethan's jaw tightened. "If he comes back—" "He won't," Cole said firmly. "But if he does, we handle it as a family. Nobody goes off half-cocked. We're smarter than that." "Dad's right," Sophie said. "We do this together." Over the next few weeks, they waited for David to call, to show up again, to make good on his threats. But nothing came. Grady called with updates. David had left Wyoming, returned to wherever he'd come from, hadn't made any further contact. Slowly, Mara started to breathe again. Spring turned to summer. The new house settled into itself, boards creaking in the heat, paint fading slightly in the sun. They added small touches. Curtains Sophie picked out, a vegetable garden Emma started, a basketball hoop the boys installed on the barn. Lily started first grade and came home every day with stories about her teacher and her friends and what they'd learned. She talked more now, her voice getting stronger every day, though she still carried Mr. Flops everywhere. Emma's nightmares came less frequently. When they did come, she'd wake up and go to Sophie's room or to Mara and Cole's, and someone would sit with her until she could sleep again. Jake and Sam grew like weeds, shooting up inches over the summer, eating everything in sight, turning into teenagers seemingly overnight. Ethan graduated high school and got accepted to the community college in Casper with a partial scholarship. He wanted to study engineering, wanted to build things. When he told them, Mara saw Diane in his eyes. The same practical ambition, the same determination to make something of himself. "Mom would be proud," Sophie told him. "Yeah," Ethan said. "I think she would." Sophie herself started talking about college, about maybe studying social work or teaching. "I want to help people," she said. "People like us. Families that are broken and trying to put themselves back together." Cole's business picked up as word spread about the rebuild. People saw what he'd done, lost everything and built it back, and wanted to work with someone who understood resilience. He hired help, brought in a crew, started taking on bigger projects. Money was still tight, probably always would be on a ranch, but they had enough. Enough for groceries and school supplies and the occasional trip to town for ice cream. And Mara cooked, every day, 3 meals a day, for a family that had grown to include her completely. She learned everyone's favorites, their allergies, their quirks, learned that Jake hated mushrooms and Sam would eat anything if you put enough cheese on it. Learned that Emma liked her eggs scrambled, but Lily wanted hers over easy. Learned that Ethan would never admit he had a sweet tooth, but would demolish an entire pan of brownies if left unsupervised. She burned things sometimes, overcooked chicken, scorched rice, made cookies that came out hard as rocks. The family ate them anyway or didn't, and nobody made her feel bad about it. On a Saturday in October, exactly 1 year after the fire, they had a memorial service. Not for the house was just wood and nails like Mara had said, but for Diane. For the woman who'd built that house and that family and whose absence was still felt in quiet moments. They gathered at the site where the old house had stood, where grass had grown back thick and green. Cole had placed a stone there, simple granite with Diane's name and dates. "I thought we should acknowledge this day," Cole said, gathering everyone in a circle. A year ago, we lost everything, the house, our belongings, pieces of Mom we'd been holding on to. But we didn't lose each other, Sophie added. No, we didn't, and we didn't lose Mom's memory. She's still here, in all of us, in the way Sophie takes care of everyone, in Ethan's stubbornness. That got a small laugh. In Emma's kindness, and Lily's bravery, and the boys' humor and mischief. She'd be happy we rebuilt, Emma said quietly. She always said you can't move forward if you're stuck looking back. She also said family is the people who show up when things are hard, Lily added. She looked at Mara. Mom would have liked you. She would have been glad you stayed. Mara felt tears on her cheeks. I'm glad I stayed too. They stood there in silence for a while, 7 people who'd been broken by loss and fire and had somehow become whole again. Then Lily said, Can we go home now? I'm cold. Yeah, baby, let's go home. Home. Mara turned the word over in her mind as they walked back to the house. This place that had started as a job became a refuge, turned into everything she'd been running from and toward all along. That night, after dinner, after dishes, after the kids had scattered to homework and showers and the business of being young, Mara found herself back on the porch. Cole joined her, 2 cups of coffee in hand, even though it was too late for caffeine and they'd both be up all night. You think about her? Mara asked. Diane. About what she'd think of all this. Sometimes. I think she'd be relieved mostly that I'm not drowning anymore, that the kids are okay, that we're moving forward instead of being stuck in grief. You think she'd be okay with me? With us? I think she'd be grateful you showed up when we needed you most. He paused. Can I tell you something? Always. That first day when you showed up on the porch, I almost sent you away. You looked too young, too uncertain, and I thought there's no way this is going to work. But then you walked into that disaster of a kitchen and just started cleaning. Didn't ask permission, didn't wait for direction, just rolled up your sleeves and got to work. I didn't know what else to do. That's what made it perfect. You didn't try to fix us with words or therapy or some grand gesture. You just showed up and did the work, day after day after day. I didn't have anywhere else to be. Maybe not at first, but you did eventually. You could have left after the fire. Could have left when David showed up. Could have left 100 times when things got hard. But you stayed. Because I love you. All of you. We love you too. And not just because you cook and clean and keep us functioning. We love you because you're you. Because you ran into a fire for a stuffed rabbit and stood up to David and learned to split wood even though you're terrible at it. I'm not terrible. You almost took off your own foot. That was one time. Cole laughed and pulled her close. My point is, you're family now. Not because you married me. Not because you take care of the kids. But because you chose us. And we chose you back. Mara leaned into him and looked up at the Wyoming sky. At the stars that seemed close enough to touch. Inside, she could hear the kids, Sophie helping Emma with homework, the boys arguing over a video game, Lily singing to Mr. Flops in that slightly off-key way she had. This was her life now, not perfect, not easy, but hers. The ranch would never be what it was before the fire. The family would never be what it was before Diane died. But they'd built something new from the ashes, something that honored the past without being trapped by it. Something that made room for grief and joy, for loss and love, for everything that made them human. Mara Quinn Hart had stopped running. She'd found her home in the last place she'd expected. A broken family on a burned ranch in the middle of Wyoming, nowhere. Had found her purpose in cooking meals and comforting nightmares and showing up every day even when it was hard. Had found herself in the process of becoming what these people needed. Not perfect, not without mistakes, but present and trying and enough. What are you thinking about? Cole asked. How grateful I am that I got off that bus. Best day of my life, you showing up. Second best, Mara corrected. Best day was when you came back into the fire for me. That wasn't a choice. That was instinct. Still counts. They sat there until the coffee went cold and the stars wheeled overhead, and the sounds from inside quieted as the kids went to bed one by one. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, bills to pay, fences to mend, arguments to mediate, meals to cook. The work of building a life, of being a family, was never done. But tonight, sitting on the porch with her husband beside her and her family, her family, safe inside, Mara felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. She felt peace, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.